The Grigori. You probably already know them as the Fallen Watchers. High-ranking angelic beings originally appointed as the literal guardians of the stars. But, as the ancient texts tell us, these celestial ministers famously fell from grace. And look, their defection didn't just cause a minor ripple in the heavens, it completely upended the spiritual and biological course of Earth itself. So, this ancient mythology forces us to ask a staggering question right out of the gate. What exactly happens when the very beings appointed to regulate stellar orders and natural phenomena decide to just abandon their divine posts? Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to trace this cosmic crisis through 5 distinct stages: the descent on Mount Hermon, the rise of the Nephilim, the teaching of worthless secrets, the theological rise of the prince Satan, and finally, the ultimate fate of the Grigori in the heavens. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the physical rebellion and their descent on Mount Hermon. According to the Enochic tradition, the whole conspiracy started with an intense, illicit attraction to human women. But the Watcher's leader, Shamihaza, sometimes called Samyaza, he was terrified of committing this massive transgression alone. So what does he do? He convinces 200 of his peers, or 200 myriads depending on the Slavonic manuscript you're reading, to enter into this binding pact. They descended onto the peak of Mount Hermon as a united, rebellious front. In fact, the text suggests the mountain is actually named Hermon specifically because that's the exact spot they swore this dark oath and bound themselves by mutual curses to see the deed through. Which brings us to part 2, the horrifying aftermath and the rise of the Nephilim. To really grasp the scale of this catastrophe, we need to look at the culprits and what they created. The fallen angels themselves are known as the Grigori, a Slavonic term literally meaning those who watch or those who are awake. But by taking human wives and mingling their celestial seed with human genetics, these watchers produce something entirely new and entirely terrifying, a hybrid race of giants known as the Nephilim. These Nephilim were an absolute biological disaster. Because they were a massive race of hybrid giants, they recklessly consumed the Earth's resources. When the food ran out, things got extremely dark. They turned their ravenous appetites toward animals, and eventually humans. This union between Watcher and human literally plunged the ancient world into an era of unparalleled bloodshed, chaos, and total biological contamination. Moving on to part 3, the teaching of worthless secrets. Because the physical corruption was really only half the story. You see, the Watchers also initiated a systematic spiritual corruption of humanity by exposing us to forbidden heavenly secrets way before we were spiritually prepared to handle them. Take Azazel, for example. He taught metallurgy, showing men how to forge weapons of war like swords, shields, and breastplates. At the same time, he taught women the arts of vanity and seduction through cosmetics, precious stones, and dyes. Then you have Shemihaza teaching magical spells and root cutting, which is essentially plant sorcery. And Cassideia revealed horrific knowledge, like spiritual smitings and exactly how to strike a fetus in the womb to cause an abortion. What's fascinating and deeply ironic is that there's this profound etymological mapping going on in the texts. These angels taught worthless secrets that directly corresponded to the celestial domains embedded right in their own names. Barakel taught the signs of lightning. Kokabel taught the stars. Zikkel taught shooting stars, Shamziel the sun, and Sahariel the moon. They essentially took their secret administrative duties and twisted them into forbidden sorceries. It gets even more surreal when we look at the angel Pinimu. He instructed humanity in something we use literally every single day, writing with ink and papyrus. Now to us, that's just basic civilization, right? But the ancient Enochic texts frame this as a severe corruption. Why? Because humanity was originally designed for pure, immortal faith. Our word was meant to be our ultimate bond. Pinimu's gift of ink completely replaced divine trust with earthly, written contracts. Let's transition over to part 4, the profound theological evolution involving the prince Satan. The Slavonic tradition of Second Enoch does something absolutely masterful here. It takes 2 completely independent ancient mythologies about the origins of evil and fuses them together. On one side, you have the Enochic template, where evil begins with the earthly lust of the Watchers and their illicit teachings. On the other side, you have the Adamic template, where evil is born from Satan's immense pride and his ultimate refusal to bow to Adam. Second Enoch elegantly combines these frameworks. The great celestial rebel, Satan, is cast out of the heights for trying to place his throne higher than the clouds to equal the Lord's power. As punishment, he's stripped of his divine angelic suffix el, becoming simply Satan. But, and here is the crucial twist, in this new combined framework, he remains the supreme ruler of the Grigori, explicitly named as the very prince who led those 200 myriad watchers down to Mount Hermon. It's a brilliant theological move linking the cosmic rebellion of pride with the earthly rebellion of lust. Finally, that brings us to part 5, the celestial aftermath, and the fate of the Grigori in the heavens. As the patriarch Enoch makes his visionary ascent through the 7 heavens, he witnesses the tragic fallout firsthand. In the 2nd heaven, he encounters a class of Grigori known as the incarcerated. These once mighty angels who followed Sataniel are now dark, dejected prisoners kept under heavy guard and intense gloom. When they realize who Enoch is, a righteous mortal scribe, they actually bow down to him, weeping, and literally beg him to intercede and pray to God on their behalf. Enoch's stunned reaction perfectly captures the sheer tragedy and the complete inversion of the natural cosmic order. He simply replies, "Who am I, a mortal man that I should pray for angels?" I mean, think about it. The very beings created to mediate heavenly realities down to the earth are now pleading with a human to mediate for them. Continuing his ascent into the 5th heaven, Enoch encounters another distinct class of Grigori. But unlike the ones below, they aren't imprisoned, they're paralyzed by grief. It's this massive army of watchers with withered, melancholy faces. They are so utterly devastated by the severe punishment of their brothers in the lower realms that they've completely abandoned their heavenly duties. There's no liturgy, no worship, just an eerie, eternal silence across the 5th heaven. But Enoch steps in, acting almost like a celestial choir master. He urges them to break their silence and resume their divine liturgy so they don't enrage the Lord even further. Amazingly, they listen to this mortal. 4 trumpets sound in unison, and the massive host of Grigori burst into a piteous, heartbreaking song before the Lord. Through Enoch's intervention, just a tiny fraction of their original cosmic purpose is restored. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. The story of the Grigori is ultimately a profound cautionary tale about the delicate balance between divine order and the thirst for power. If the majestic guardians of the stars could be utterly ruined by the very secrets they were meant to keep, what exactly is the eternal cost of our own relentless pursuit of forbidden knowledge?